Ready to go?
We are ready to go.
Then we'll go. Good morning and welcome to the October 30th edition of District 5960's Friday Features. Today we have two speakers from the Wallin Education Partners and here to tell about their successful mission in helping low-income students with high potential achieve their dreams. We have Susan Bazo-King, who is the Executive Director, and under her direction with Wallin, she has more than doubled the number of students that receive support. She's a passionate supporter of equal access to educational attainment and service to the community. And along with her is Stela Center, the Deputy Director of Wallin Education Partners. Now, Stela is a former Wallin Education Partners scholar. So she went through the program as a youth and has that perspective of having gone through it, bringing that to the team. So she's able to really speak about the impact of the program. She's originally from Bosnia. She moved here to Minnesota as a teenager, and with the support of Wallin was able to graduate, to attend the University of Minnesota and graduate with majoring in global studies. She then, this is the exciting part for me and for the rest of us, I'm sure, later completed her graduate degree from the United Nations mandated University of Peace in Costa Rica as an ambassador, a scholar with Rotary. So this is a fine example of our dollars invested in the foundation being well spent. No pressure, Stela. Since then, she's worked for a number of nonprofits, including the American Refugee Committee, which is now Alight with Angela Eifert, who we all know, and worked with me back at the Red Cross, and that's where I met her. We were colleagues there together. So I will turn this over to Susan and Stela. Take it away.
Okay, so I will go ahead and share my presentation, and then Susan and I will just do quick introductions as well. So one moment here. Let's see. Okay. Okay, can everybody see that okay? Yes. So thanks for that introduction, Ed. I feel like I don't really need to further introduce myself, but before I just share a little bit more about kind of my history and the impact of scholarships on my personal life, I'll just ask Susan to greet you all and just give a little bit more about why she's doing the work that she's doing, and a little bit about her history as well that maybe Ed didn't.
Right. Thank you, everybody, and thanks for giving us this opportunity to share this very Minnesota story about an organization that was founded with the intent to support low-income students to and through college. We have grown significantly in the last few years, and I feel that our work has never been more important against the backdrop of a difficult situation. Our work has been particularly important during the pandemic. And one of the best things I ever did was meet Stela and bring Stela on board. I'm serious about this. This is a great hire, and we love working together. At least I love working with Stela, and we love telling the story of Wallin.
Yeah, and Susan and I have, over the years, we've worked together for 5 years, and I would say we probably visited maybe 20 to 30 Rotary clubs to share the story. We love kind of talking about the successes that we've learned over the years and sharing kind of lessons learned with folks who are interested. So thanks again for having us. I do feel like the Rotary world is a small one, and in the past, what is it now, 15 years, I've had a close connection to Rotary. So just briefly, I moved here from Bosnia when I was 14. Didn't speak a word of English, didn't know what college here was all about or what it would mean for my future. But fortunately, I had some teachers along the way that kind of had a plan for me, lucky for me, and introduced me to kind of the application process, FAFSA, and then really importantly, the application process for Wallin Education Partners. So that was a scholarship that I received along with all other types of services that really focused on making sure that I had what I needed to succeed, whether it was helping me just adapt to the culture or learn how to navigate resources. I think that's really the component of this program that we'll get into a little bit more later, but I think that's why it's been so successful. And then fast forward a couple of years later, I was fortunate enough to be selected as the Ambassador for Peace Scholar, and I worked closely with the Minneapolis University Rotary through that process. And then in Costa Rica, I connected to a Rotaract club and also visited many Rotary clubs during my year there. And then when I came back to Minnesota, I really didn't know what my kind of path would look like other than I wanted to work in the nonprofit world. And that's what I've been doing in a variety of different topics that Ed mentioned, kind of different areas, international development, domestic violence, and now education for the past 5 years. So I'm a firm believer in investing in young people in our community. And I'm certainly grateful for the support that's been given to me. So thank you all for a warm welcome here. And I think what I'd like to do next, last year we were fortunate enough to be featured in a PBS NewsHour video or story. And I just like to share that because then Susan and I don't have to get into all the nitty gritty and you get to hear from a couple of students. So I will try to figure out, let me see. Okay, what we figured out works best with videos and Zoom is if I put a link in the chat and then we all mute and watch it on our own computers. So can we try that? Is that okay? So we'll just go.
I'm not seeing anything in the chat.
There it is, Stella. Thanks.
please let me know when you're done. And just if you look up, then I'll know. Okay. Or a thumbs up works as well. We'll give it maybe one more minute. Okay. I hope everybody's either done or close to being done, and you can certainly watch that on your own as well. I just feel like that video really captures the kind of essence of the program and why we do the work that we do, as well as the success we've had over the years. And so just very briefly, as mentioned in the video, Wallin Education Partners has been around for about 30 years. It was founded by Wallin, who was the executive first at Pillsbury and then the CEO at Medtronic for years in the late 80s. And so the program really always focused on looking at the students, the low-income students that needed the additional help to graduate from college. And very early on, it was realized that financial aid alone does not help graduation rates, which is how the model evolved to be what it is today. And so really quickly, some statistics that I still find very fascinating is that approximately only about 11 to 20% nationally of students who begin college who are first generation low income and students of color will actually complete their degrees. So students will start, they'll take out loans, they'll get their lives in order, and then barriers come up, and for whatever reason, they don't persist. So that's the number we're really focusing on increasing and have been over the last few years. Also in the videos, a little bit over 60% of all demographics that begin college will graduate. So that includes low income and everybody else. And then just a dramatic increase in the cost of college over the last 25 years it's just tremendous. And then in Minnesota alone, about $31,000 is what the average is for student loans for students. And in our program, 40% of students graduate with no debt. And those that do have debt owe about half of Minnesota's average, about $17,000. So just a little bit about the model is we work with students to promote the program, and actually applications for this cycle are opening on Sunday of this week, on November 1st. And we start working with them, selecting them their senior year in high school. And then they are paired up with an advisor once they're selected in the late spring and early summer. And so we start working with them at that point really intensely, making sure that they're on track, that they know how to address any challenges that come their way. And we are with them until they graduate. And in a lot of ways, we're with them after they graduate through our alumni programming. So they'll receive 4 years of financial aid, which is about up to $4,000 a year. And then the advising is what I'm talking about when they're paired up with a professional Wallin employee advisor, very well versed in this work, and they can kind of help with whatever challenges come up for the student. We have a very well developed curriculum that they're following, but I think the beauty of the program really is that the student is the one that leads the conversations, that leads kind of their own programming. So it's really, every conversation is focused on what the student needs at that very time. So as you can imagine, during COVID, the questions are very different than they would have been last year around the same time. So our program is agile, and we're able to kind of move with the times and address whatever comes up. And then we talk about, partnerships is in our name, but this is really a key component of our success. We partner currently with 56 high schools in the Twin City metro area and a couple in greater Minnesota. And then our students attend 60 to 70 colleges any given year. And we also work with community-based organizations on recruiting and lessons learned, data sharing, all of that. So true partnerships in every sense. And then the main partnership for us is, of course, the one with our donor partners. Donor partners are matched with individual scholars, as you saw in the video. So they'll be able to know exactly what their investment is doing and how the scholars are progressing. And I think that's why we do have such a high retention of donors. About 80% of our donors will continue to support students over the years. So I know for me personally, this was a big component as well. There's really kind of some magic behind knowing who sort of believes in you and who's very invested in your success, and also a little bit of guilt. So when you want to consider dropping out or just things are too hard, life's too hard, I can't do this, you kind of know that there's somebody really that cares, that's watching. And I think this is especially important for first generation students who maybe don't have parents who just kind of know the sort of all the how to navigate college and all of those pieces that are really hard. So this way you have your advisor, but in a lot of cases our donors develop those important relationships as well. And I wanted to mention here also that this year has been, as you know, just really tough for a variety of reasons. But one kind of pivotal moment for us as an organization also was the social unrest and what happened to George Floyd in May. Just terrible circumstances. But I think our community kind of came together at that time also and has been motivated to support especially African-American men through scholarships. And so the Minneapolis University Rotary gathered and started pooling funds, I want to say between July and end of August, to support an African-American student. And so now we have a in memory of George Floyd Rotary Scholar through our program. It's just such a powerful story because there were, I think, 4 Rotarians from the Minneapolis University Club that went out and got 9 other clubs to participate. They raised $24,000. $23,000 is the cost for one student in our program. And so they raised a little bit of additional funds for things like a computer or supplies or whatever other needs the student has. I just love that story because so much work went into that, but it really shows how the community can kind of come together and have a huge impact on a student. Okay, this is just a little bit about what our student body looks like currently. Right now, we have almost 1,200 students in our program. We currently have, our traditional program is supports students who are attending 4-year universities and colleges. Then we recently started a program supporting community colleges. It's called Opportunity Pathways, and Susan will talk about that in a little bit. But historically, so we always, low income is kind of the first thing we look at for our eligibility criteria. And the average household taxable income has been between $20,000 and $25,000. And about 70 to 80% are students of color every year, and kind of the same level of first generation students as well. And then we really like this graph because it shows kind of how our graduation rates for our scholars has moved over the last several years. I mentioned earlier that when Wallin realized early on in the program that financial aid alone does not make a significant difference in outcomes for low-income students, that it really is that wraparound support and the network that student needs to persist. And so over the last several years, we've had an extraordinary rate really of 90% or higher. This last year was 91%. We've had as high as 93%. And again, for low-income students, that graduation rate is much lower than what it is for all scholars. So we received some national level recognition just last year. We were awarded a Scholarship Provider of the Year award by the National Scholarship Association. And so that for us, you know, we're this kind of small nonprofit in Minnesota that's now getting national recognition. And we often get calls from folks around the country who are interested in learning more about our model. So we take great pride in that. And then just this summer, actually, we partnered with an external evaluator, Ecotone Analytics, and we asked them to really dig deep into kind of the social return on investment of our donors' dollars. And so I'll just leave this here for a minute, but really what it tells us is that for every dollar invested in our program, $7.79 are returned in social value. And then our program lifts the graduation rates for our students in our demographics by 57%. And so this is, and then you can kind of see the breakdown of what this looks like, but benefits of a college degree are immense and oftentimes very difficult to measure. If you have a large percent of students from a low-income community that are now going to college, graduating, their siblings are going to college, graduating, they're paying more in taxes, they rely less on social services. I mean, the impact really is tremendous. And it's one that's permanent. A college degree doesn't go away. So we just feel strongly that this is a program worth investing in. I can follow up with sending this graph if anybody's interested to see it further. And so then I mentioned our 2-year program. As soon as Susan King started with Wallin, was it 7 years ago now, I believe, this was kind of on her list of things to take a look at community college partnerships. So we are there now, and I'll let Susan speak about kind of how we got here and what the program looks like now.
Yeah, thanks, Stella. So Stella's quite right. Early on, I remember looking recently at the notes to the first board of directors meeting that I participated in as their new executive director. And I had presented at that time sort of an overview of what I was thinking early in my leadership there, and asked about community colleges. We have 17 corporate partners that help us support scholarships, and they were beginning to ask us questions about why just a 4-year degree? Why has our program concentrated on that? The answer is twofold. One, a baccalaureate degree traditionally has been the pathway to an increased level of income over the lifetime of one of our scholars. But we also began to learn more about the state data, the demographic data that comes out of the Department of Economic and Educational Opportunity in the state, and persistent questions to, is there another way? Are there other multiple pathways that will help this same population, low income students in our community attain a degree, and really focusing on gainful employment within 2 years rather than 4. And that conversation continued. And what we ended up doing, we spent about 15 months working together with high schools, with community partners, and the first year, just 3 of our local community colleges, to build a model that we thought could work. One of the things about Wallin is we really are data driven, and although we want to try new things, we want to also make sure that we have a good opportunity to be successful. And the goal is always the success of the students. Staying focused on the college student is really one thing that sets us apart. So the talent gap was there. Community college have an even more difficult charge to improve graduation rates. As Stella mentioned, and the graph referred, about 61% of students entering a 4-year college degree will complete it. In the community college system, it's much lower at 29%. So that was what we decided. Certainly we could do better than that. And so we built the model for serving 2-year students based on this same combination of financial aid and very intensive support. And so we've had our first year, and our retention, so the 2-year graduation rates, we aren't to that second year yet, but our retention 1 year over to the second year, persistence is 76%. And among these 3 community college, on average, their completion rate year over year at this point is about 55%. So we got an early indication that this same approach would have the potential for being successful for this program path. Now, I will also say we learned so much. This is, pilots are called pilots for a reason. You never know what that flight path is going to look like until you begin. And we've learned a lot. And if we had more time, I could tell you more, but sufficient to say that we took all those learnings and adopted our program so that we could continue to help these students. The main thing that we changed was an individual interview with all of our applicants to see how focused they were and how much they really knew about college. And that resulted in a 4-day boot camp approach where all students have to enroll in a mandatory summer session. And so far we have another 50 more students that entered the program just a month ago. And we're happy to report that across all of our programs, 4- and 2-year, we had no one that didn't show up, no summer melt. We anticipated with COVID that we might see students stepping back, asking whether or not this was the right time to enter college. And what we discovered, at least in this very small sample, is that with this support, they did arrive at college. They are enrolled in classes, although most of them are remote learning. So we're feeling really positive that this can be another pathway successful to serve more students. But we're learning as we go.
Great. So Susan touched briefly on kind of the impacts of COVID on our program. And so Susan, could you talk just a little bit about how our program has adapted to this new reality over the last 6 months?
Yeah, just briefly, March, the middle of March, we knew that we were in trouble. And we also, I was very interested in being sure that I protected our 20+ staff members. So we went to a remote office work situation right away. But that also meant we had to navigate the changes that our 1,200 students were confronting. I remember the very first weekend realizing that we had 39 students that were studying abroad. And how are we going to get those kids back into the country before the borders started to close? So we spent that long weekend really sorting through that. But then it was really interesting to watch. Remember, our students are going to almost 70 different colleges, most in the upper Midwest, but many are at some of the HBCUs across the country. And the colleges, of course, were trying to figure out their next steps. Are they going to let these kids stay on campus? Are we going to send them home? How is this going to work? Our program was lucky for us. It was relatively easy for us to transition to an online advice approach. In the past, we met personally, individually, in person with every student 4 to 8 times every year. So how is this going to impact the effectiveness of our program when we weren't really meeting these kids in person in the second semester? So we got through the spring semester, faced the summer like everybody else, and we're really interested in this idea of would they come back for more? And I mentioned just a moment ago that we were happy that most of them did return to college. This American dream of a college education, whether 2-year or 4-year, is really strong in our community and country. And especially for this demographic of students, if they are given the opportunity, they're for the most part really going to embrace it. The other things I mentioned is these 4 key takeaways is that the virus did affect the population of our students more than it did others. Our students being so low income, many of their parents are essential workers in retail, in the healthcare industry. And so a disproportionate number of our students did contract the virus, and also, if not them personally, there's someone in their family has. We have no evidence, we haven't heard of any deaths among our group, but having to really deal with the virus in a very real way was obvious and consistent with our group. The last thing was, one of the things we realized was really focusing on those things, encouraging our students to not think about all the things they couldn't control, like the virus, like canceled internship, to help them create a positive framework so they could think about what they can do as we work through this really difficult time. So that's kind of a snapshot of where we are right now. More to come. Most of our students are going to be sent home at Thanksgiving from their campuses and will be asked not to return until January after the holidays. So we're learning, they're learning, but we're pretty bullish on the fact that this program is adaptable and will continue to meet the individual needs of all of our students. And this must have been a Zoom meeting that we had, so we can still connect.
Absolutely. In fact, we are careful to say there's been some benefits to the virtual world, more participation in career events and networking, and a lot of interest in professional development. So, so we'll take it. We'll take the with the bad, I guess. So with that, I'll stop sharing, and we'll open it for questions.
And I think we have a couple in the chat room already.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, one of them is the mental health issue. That's the one I was able to read. As much as I like to think I can multitask, I have to say that being able to read and respond right away is not one of the things I'm quite adept at. But this is a great point. The amount of mental health broadly stated, primarily depression among college-age students, is very high. And so that was what we were very aware of that. And because we work so closely with these students, we're able to identify and bring a whole host of resources to them. And also doing a lot of suggestions and online meditation, mindfulness meditation, walking them through these issues. I would say, just in a recent conversation with our advisors, that in fact we are seeing an uptick in the emotional health, really, of our students. So trying to attend to that very carefully. So good point. And again, because we're small and we know the students, we're agile and we can move to where they are. So Anne, thanks for that question. And I think there was another one, maybe?
Yeah, I see it here from Rick. Rick, our program really lets kind of the student, as long as they're eligible for our program, they're accepted. They attend one of our partner colleges. They can go anywhere in the 5-state region or any HBCU in the country. They're the ones that we don't really impact their major decisions in terms of which field they'd like to go into. So they guide that. In fact, sometimes we will navigate maybe some family conversations, or just today I saw that a student felt the pressure to really go into healthcare because of their family, but she really wanted to be a writer. And so we'll have those types of conversation, not where we're influencing, but just where we're saying you want to do what you can be successful in and what you're going to love doing in the future. But that said, about 40% of our students are in STEM broadly. So about 40%. So that's out of 1,200, that is a significant number. And that's an area where some of our corporate partners are really interested in. So earlier this week, I was reporting to our executive team that just this week we've gotten messages from 3 of our corporate partners saying, here's some internship and employment opportunities, and Wallin Scholars will get priority on that selection. So for us, that's huge. In fact, some of our partners are stepping out of their regular process and hiring first year and second year Wallin Scholars for internships to really provide those opportunities where otherwise our students wouldn't have access to.
Okay, great. Can you say if 3M is one of your sponsors?
They are.
Good.
They are. They have been. They were, in fact, I think, Susan, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they were our first corporate partner in St. Paul. And so,
yes, right after Medtronic. They were the
right.
Thank you.
And they've supported, I think, 60 students so far over the years. So yes.
It's great to hear.
Thank you.
Could I make a couple of comments and question? First one is that in the Fertility and Columbia Heights Rotary, we've had Strive program for many, many years. And it's for the lower third of the GPA in their senior year to raise their GPA, and we provide scholarships for them in the community colleges. And it's worked very well. Students do improve and they receive the scholarships. But then I did some follow-up with the colleges themselves to find out how was the success rate and what was happening and are there problems. And the answer was that one of the issues that they had to deal with was the fact that in the high school STRIVE program, they're getting special attention. When they get to college, it turns around to their responsibility on the student itself, and they tend not to get the same level of communication, and it causes them to revert back to old habits that they were doing in high school, and that's why they were in the bottom third. So I would suggest that take a look at that. And my second issue is that over the years, I've learned that when you go to college, that you do something simple, and that is for every hour of class, you set aside 2 hours of study in that class material and you journal it. If you don't journal it, it doesn't happen. And that's for the 2-year or 4-year programs. And when you get into postgraduate, it becomes 3 hours for every hour that you're attending the class. And a very, very low percentage of people ever do that.
Mhm. Thanks for the reminder about STRIVE. I think what you found in looking at the impact of your program is what we've learned is that the colleges really aren't set up to attend to these variety of needs at the same ratio as a program like ours or like STRIVE, where we have typically at the University of Minnesota, you might have an academic advisor that has a caseload of 1,000 students. And so the sheer numbers don't work to serve the needs of individual students. I love your 2 hours to 1 hour. One of the benefits of the remote learning is these kids have more time. I mean, even those that are living on campus, they aren't as likely to be involved in social things that are usually what distracts them from the 2 hours of study per 1 hour in class. So we take this, in fact, we provide planners and a journal for all of our students when they enter our program to encourage them to keep track of things.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Questions?
If I could ask a question. It strikes me that the Henrys who are featured in the PBS feature may not be the typical mentors, people who put up $4,000 and then take on a individual student. I'm curious as to what your typical mentors are and how it works, who makes up a typical mentor and how that goes.
Stella, you want me to take a stab at that? Okay. So another good question, David. The Henrys are by far our youngest donors. And I remember very clearly, she called me at the end of the calendar year a few years ago and said she had been doing this volunteering and it just wasn't quite feeling like they wanted to do more. A typical, our donor base or mentors who can become mentors, we have 17 corporate partners like 3M, Medtronic, US Bank, et cetera, and they provide funding for our scholars. But most of our funders are individual families, family foundations, and they tend to, I would say, be older donors because this is a major gift for many. But they run the gamut. I think that what they share as donors is the knowledge that education is the key, however you want to define it, that is a return, that the return on the investment of their philanthropic dollars is pretty proven when it goes to educational programs, all the way K-12, all the way through college. So that is the common denominator, I would say. Stella, what would you add?
Yeah, and so we don't really have guidelines for donor partners. We let them and the student has to be comfortable with the relationship, of course. again, personally, to me, that was a huge thing to have my donor partners. I mean, they just turned into friends. They attended my wedding and know my family well. So I wouldn't say that's typical, but that happens depending on the interest of donors. We have others who support, say, for a year, and they meet them we have a reception every June, but then they kind of step back and just don't have time to kind of take it any further. And also there's comfort in knowing that every student, regardless of that donor partner partnership, has an advisor. And the advisors are professionals. Many of them have master's degrees. They're really well kind of versed in all of this. They're, speaking about the 2-to-1 ratio in terms of hours, I would say out of topics discussed with advisors and students, I would say time management and study habits are one of the top 3. And so I think the combination of the support of advisors, donors, we also have peer mentor programming, and then we are also pulling in our alumni who are now young professionals in the community to serve as mentors as well. So I feel like every student is really well taken care of, and they don't have to take us up on everything we offer, but a lot of them do. What else?
This is Ann Herzog Olson. Hi, good to see both.
Hi, Ann.
Hi. When I got to know you when I was at Social Venture Partners, you were going through one of your challenges. It has to do with the fundraising side of it, is kind of the balance of support through Wallin versus others. And I'm curious, I'd love an update. And I did miss the first half of the meeting. I got called into babysitting duties for my grandma this morning, which is awesome. But, I'm really curious how that's going. And also, and you may have covered this already, but I kind of doubt it. I think, for others to learn about the program in itself it's such an impressive program. And I'm a big fan, but I'm curious, how your, financial situation is going right now with COVID. Is it up? Is it down? Is it flat? And that balanced portfolio, how is that project working? Get that effort working for you?
Mm-hmm. Susan, do you want to take that one, or should I?
Yeah, no, I think I'm thinking back, Ann. I knew that I knew you and I couldn't quite place it. So great. Of course you're a Rotarian. So great. We are a nonprofit, so totally dependent on, gifts. We don't receive money from the state. Sometimes I think we should. It would be good for them, but that's also comes with different types of challenges. So we do compete. One of the things that happened to us that really increased our financial strength was a very generous commitment on the part of an organization, North Star Education Finance. And these are, this was a business that had really provided loans to students that were in college. And as they wound down that thrust of their business, all of the money that comes to them was put into a newly created foundation. I think that's the simplest way to describe it. And they really looked at the different efforts going on across our community. We have such a wonderful nonprofit community with people that talk to each other and try to connect the dots. And so North Star Education Finance was pivotal in connecting us to College Possible, the Page Foundation, and in particular Cristo Rey, which is a high school that they support. And so even in the last few years, we've worked really closely with our partners to connect in ways that increase their effectiveness and ours as well. The primary one, I would say, is College Possible. So of the 300 scholarships roughly that we awarded last year, I believe 140 also were College Possible students during the high school years. So I think there's a big opportunity across our state to find areas where greater collaboration will cost less overall and also increase the impact that all of our organizations can have. But that's hard work because, you know, there is a competitiveness, limited number of dollars. I think what we're finding in this year so far, Anne, is that our donors are sticking with us, and they recognize that this is a financially challenging time. Because the last thing I'll say is because our donors commit to scholarships at the beginning, we always have this longer tail. So I know I have a student and that commitment will provide funding for them through the next 4 years. So unlike other organizations that are more transactional, we haven't had any layoffs. We applied for a PPP loan and got it, but then we were one of the few that says, you know what, I don't think we need this right now. So we actually returned that money. People, you know, just can't imagine that happened, but it was designed to prevent layoffs. And we did not need to use that funding for that reason. So that's a long answer, sorry.
No, I'm really happy to hear that things are going well for your organization. So thank you for the answer.
Yeah,
Could I
thank you.
also add, and I don't know if you were here for this part, but I mentioned the social unrest earlier this year and how that's oddly enough had a positive impact in terms of the community coming together. So our, let's see, we've had 4 donor partners come on board last year after May and the murder of George Floyd to support specifically African-American students, and then 7 this year. So our cycle is through June. And so those are new folks that came to our organization with at least a gift of $23,000 saying, I need to do more. Our community is suffering and this feels like something tangible I can do right now and see the impact really quickly. So I think there's been some positive impact that way as well that was not expected. We were really preparing for a reduction in the number of students. But I think, again, our goal for this year is about 270 new students for the 4-year program.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I think we may need to wrap things up. We're coming up to the top of the hour, and we try to keep this to an hour-ish or so. So I want to thank you, Susan and Stella, for
Thank you.
sharing your story. I know when I shared the story with my daughter as to what my friend Stella was involved in, she was very excited about it. And that's why we came to the decision to the gifts that we received, we passed on to Wallin to further somebody's education. So keep up the great work. Want to remind everyone, thank you both for being here. Thank everyone else for attending and participating. Next Friday feature will be the November 13th edition. Rick Heidick, who's with us this afternoon or this morning, afternoon, I don't know what time it is. It's afternoon somewhere, right? Rick is the head of our chairing the Faster Hope team with Initiative in Nicaragua. He's bringing in David Cohn, who is leading the effort in Nicaragua with Opportunity International, and that's a new wrinkle we have with Faster Hope. We're partnering with them, and we'll learn more about that partnership and the great work happening down in Nicaragua during this time as well. So want to thank everybody for being here, and we'll wrap it up.